Do you guys remember when Mr. Rogers used to come into the screen and he used to change his shoes? I kind of feel like that with this check engine light. It seems to be more like the norm lately. In this video, we are going to talk about the 68C recall specifically. Listen, if you're new to the recall, maybe this is your first 4xe, maybe this is your first recall, maybe this is your first potential battery fire with the 4xe. We're gonna dive deep. We're gonna compare this to the B9A and the 95B recall that happened, which I would basically call this all part of the same recall. So if you really wanna understand what's going on and what the history was and why some of us are frustrated, maybe this is your first go around with this is the video for you. If you really don't care and you just said, I'm just gonna wait for the fix, I'm not gonna lie, move on to another video. This one's gonna be boring. Super random, but yesterday I was wearing my red Jeep fleece from North Face, and I thought I would share this. I also have this red Jeep stool. So a few years ago, Jeep and Product Red teamed up, and everything you'd purchase went towards Red's initiative. So I snagged onto a bunch of that stuff. I got a water bottle. And there's actually a funny story about Jeep and Ford. At the end, I'll TP it on that. So what is the 68C recall? Well, at this point, you probably know enough. But inside your battery, there's basically, imagine it all lined up with a million AA, AAA batteries. And they're all jumped together with a series of cables that create this high voltage power. Separating some of these batteries are these plastic or whatever material they are, they're these separators. So what can happen inside is if there's damage or these separators are defective, it can cause an arc over the batteries. Once you get an arc between these cells, you get thermal runaway. You get thermal runaway, things overheat, smoke starts, and fire comes behind it. So there's lies the issue. We have a hardware issue inside these batteries. What Jeep is saying right now, and the NHTSA is saying, is don't charge the battery. Now, I just want to preface, the vehicle is always a hybrid. It is never a gas-only vehicle. Let's just clear the air there. So when these batteries on our dash say that they are dead, there still is about a 15% battery power in them. As you know, every time you come to a stop sign, that the vehicle turns off. It still starts on electric. There's still power in that battery. Now, having said that, when the battery is low, not charged, the chance for this arc and this voltage spike and all the ingredients for this problem to happen is greatly reduced. So needless to say, Jeep is saying don't charge our batteries. Now, we go into another video about regen braking and what mode to drive in. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But the 68C is basically the risk for these separators and the battery fire. If we rewind, we have B9A, and I've got some notes here, I'm not gonna lie, because it's been a minute. So we got B9A and 95B. B9A, I believe, was our first one. And what that was is, that was the same problem. That was the same risk. It was pretty much, you could take this recall and move B9A on the recall list, on the recall number instead of 68C. But the fix for the B9A recall was different. Well, I don't know if it's different than what's coming, but here I can tell you what the B9A recall fix was. We brought our vehicles in, they did a battery integrity test. Basically, they would connect your battery to the computer, your Jeep to a computer. They would have to charge the battery, and then they ran this vehicle through like 2 sleep cycles. In the sleep cycle, they were saying had to be sit to like 3 hours, and then they run the test again, then it would sit for 3 hours, and then it would tell you pass, fail. There was a whole issue with all of these recalls, the B9A and the 95B, with dealers not doing it right. We had customers like, oh, I waited for mine, I was done in 15 minutes. You couldn't be done in 15 minutes because the directions said there was 2 sleep cycles. At minimum, if they started when you walked in, it was 6 hours. So that was a whole thing too. And part of me is wondering, call me a skeptic, are some of the issues we're seeing, are the issues that we're seeing that this isn't fixed? I use fix loosely, because dealers weren't doing these recalls properly. And we have hours worth of videos on how these dealers were taking shortcuts on pushing the recall fixes through. So in my head, do we have failures in the field? I'm curious, were those the same failures, the same people that said, oh, my dealership did the recall in 15 minutes, an hour, whatever? knowing we read the directions, it should have taken 6 hours. It should have been an overnight thing. At any rate, I digress. So the 95B recall was the one that focused on battery integrity test, and the dealers had to go through several sleep cycles, and they would test the anomalies through the battery before doing a software update. So what it would basically do is it would balance the battery. Then it was looking for these voltage drops. So it was looking for a fail in the battery. If it didn't find one, or if it did find one, you got a new battery. If it didn't find one, you were considered a pass. And then what would happen is the vehicle then was loaded software into the Jeep to kind of be smarter now to look for this new fail, right? So let's say you didn't fail at the time of the test, but 6 months later, something failed inside the battery. Then the check engine light would trigger, you'd bring it back in, and it would say, hey, you've got a failed battery. All fine and dandy, we're all good, right? Recall's over. And this was a small portion of Jeeps. This was, I don't remember exactly, but it wasn't all 4xEs, okay? So then fast forward a year later, or whatever it is. I don't remember all the timing, but we're on like season 3, kind of season 4. We're gonna talk about that in a second. Then we had the 95B. Guys, basically the same thing. Fire risk, we need to update software, separator issues, same thing. So you brought your Jeep in. Now this fix was a little different. This one required that the dealership charge to, I think it was a stated charge of at least 90%. The dealership had to hook up their YTech pod to the Jeep, and they had a hotspot to their phone, and they had to go out and drive the vehicle for a minimum of 10 minutes. It was all written down, right? 10 minutes, at least a couple miles. While you're driving, the software, or this test, if you will, was looking at the battery to determine, is it charging, is it not charging, is it spiking? As part of the test, you had to hold 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. Then there was a protocol that you had to hit in order for the test to actually complete properly. Now, we did a video, and I'll post the link here. I rode along with some of these tests, and I did a few of them. Some of these tests took 10 miles of driving. Some of them, it said passed damn near before you even were out of the parking lot. It was kind of weird. Like, it said you had to meet all these speeds and do all this requirements, and sometimes it would just be like, it would say passed. Like, oh, that's kind of weird. Again, I'm not an engineer, so it's smarter than I am, you know. So what would happen is the dealership would charge, it would go through these drive cycles, you'd get pass or fail. If it failed, you got a new battery. That was it. If it passed, great, good job, great Mr. Customer, great news, your vehicle passed. But when we're done with this test, we're also going to give you new software. So the new software, from my understanding, was like this calibration between the hybrid control module, and it was a new monitoring system watching what's happening with the battery. And if you had a fail, it would check engine light, and you'd come back to the dealer. So all of these fixed, so actually there was one more, and I don't remember the recall number, but there was a recall that came out, and it was for defrosters. And it was something about the defroster wasn't operating to full performance, and in the winter, you may have an issue clearing your windshield. Here's where I think it got gray. Inside that defroster recall was the same software update as the 95B. Listen, I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm wondering, did Jeep realize that maybe they didn't catch all of the VIN numbers in 95B recall? So they issued this, defroster recall, which in the defroster recall, they secretly snuck in this 95B, software update, because the defroster recall hit a lot of Jeeps. And again, I'm not saying it's the case, but there were plenty of people that didn't have the 95B recall and did have the defroster recall, and they're like, oh, it's just a defroster recall. And myself and Chris Hall were like, listen, you got to get to the dealership, get that update, because it includes that 95B software mentality or intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Almost now on the 4th recall, if you want to count the defroster one as part of it. At the end of the day, we all have the same batteries, and I see people saying, well, I got a new battery, or people even like this week, I'm getting a new battery on Thursday. Great. You probably still have the same battery. In my head, the 68C recall says Jeep's manufactured as late as, October 15th. I'm sure these batteries on the shelf are all the same. I'm making speculation. I don't know. This whole video is opinion based. Well, some of it's factual, but you can weed through what's opinion. You get a battery today, listen, I don't trust that it's not the same one with the separator issue. All of this issue all along is driven by a hardware problem, and we're trying to fix it with a software repair. So can a software repair fix a hardware problem? I mean, that's the question we all have right now, and I think it's a loaded question. And here's one problem I really have with it. Sure, a software fix can be more sensitive to the battery issues. Maybe it can shut something down if it detects an issue. But in my head, and you guys can argue this with me, does this only work if I'm driving it? Does this software issue only work if there's human eyes paying attention to what's going on? You could put all the software you want into this thing, right? It's got a battery in it, it's a charger, whatever. You can put all the software you want in this thing. But if it's sitting here, and maybe the software says a light turns on saying I failed, right? Let's call that your check engine light. And this thing's sitting on my workbench and decides to spontaneously combust or malfunction or set on fire. Does a software issue fix that if there's not a human interaction to get out, move it, extinguish it, call the fire department? I don't know. And I'm asking this question, does the software turn off the battery? Can it actually disable this battery if this thing starts arcing and it's got thermal runaway? That's the real question. I personally don't think it's a smoking gun fix. I think it's a Band-Aid. I've owned a 4xe since no one knew what they were, and it's been frustrating. So here's the other thing with that. And my son had a conversation the other day. He's like, "Dad, are we still charging the Jeep?" I said, "No." He's like, "Well, why? What's the difference?" He's like, "We've been charging it for 3 years. Nothing's changed." He's like, "We didn't get an over-the-air update." We're going to talk about that in a second. Nothing changed on the software. So we've been charging it for 3 years. Why can't we charge it now? I'm like, you know what? It's a great question. The answer, we're not charging it because we know the risk. But it leaves me to be really frustrated. We've had all these software updates. We think we're safe. We've been charging it in my garage. And we learned that we really have not been, we've really had no safety net since the first one. So have we all just been lucky? Because nothing's changed. Now we just can't charge. But you follow where I'm getting at? Like nothing's changed. Now all of a sudden we just can't charge. So where's the trust? I tell my kids, you lose trust with me, it's hard to gain it back, right? And I have the utmost trust. Our family respects each other. And you'll see where I'm going with this. If my kids do something and they lose that trust, it's going to take a long time to earn it back. Jeep, your customers are there, and it's getting to the point, not specifically anything else, but specific to this battery recall. Listen, another software update, my Jeep is not spending another night in my garage. It's just not. It's not worth the risk knowing there's another software Band-Aid for this battery. Here's my personal take. What should Jeep have done? The first recall, Jeep should have replaced all the batteries. They should have found a new supplier. They should have gone back to Samsung and said, fix it. Whatever the case, they should have replaced all the batteries. At that point, it probably was, I don't know, even if it was 100,000 Jeeps. Now we're over 300,000 Jeeps. If Jeep would have done this 3 years ago, ripped the Band-Aid off, it would have cost them a lot of money at that time, but it certainly would cost them a lot less than it's costing them now, and we would have had trust. If you look at the Chevy Bolt had a similar situation. They had battery fires. They had a similar thing. And what Chevy did was, and now that's an all-electric car, but they put software in, same idea. They put software in that says, hey, we're watching for this issue. The software actually limited the charge, I think, to 80%. Again, reduced charge, reduced risk. But they replaced all the batteries. They replaced every battery on those affected cars. Again, it was a small number of cars in comparison, but man, if Jeep would have just nipped this a year ago and ripped the Band-Aid off, yeah, it would have stung, but I think it would have stung a lot less than it did now. What's the future of the 4xe? I get asked this question a lot. I actually had the opportunity to be on a Q&A call. Now, it wasn't specific to 4xe, but it was some embargoed information that's going to come out in the next few weeks. But there was an opportunity for Q&A. Obviously. And I did ask. I said two things. I said, one is, what are we looking at with the resolution for the battery issue? And two was, where's the 2026 4xe? I flat out said, we've seen the post saying we're supposed to get increased batteries. We're supposed to get, not increased batteries, we're supposed to get increased mileage because of the different modules in the transmission. The transmission was going to get refined. Basically a polished version of what we had, what we have now. And, you know, to be fair, I think everything I've seen has been mutterings. I don't know that there's actually been official announcements. I'm trying to remember. We did do a video on the 26 4xe a few months ago. At any rate, the response I got, and needless to say, keep things pretty close to them, right? So I didn't get any great revealing answers, I guess you could say. They did confirm there was going to be a second generation 4xe for the Wrangler, so there is that. And obviously, I'm sure there's legalities. They didn't really get into a fix for a 4xe. And I'm sure like anything, there's lawyers telling them what they can and can't say, and I'm sure for rightful reasons, right? So if you made it this far through the video, what should you do? Obviously, if it were my Jeep, what I'm doing, now I'm not charging it. I'm parking it away from my home. Sure, some people say I'm overthinking it. Listen, I know there's a risk now. It's not worth it. It's not worth, if something happens, let it be contained. You can make sure your VIN is, you can look at the NHTSA website, see where your VIN is, and you can follow along on our content. We will keep you posted. There is no date yet. They're saying end of this year for a recall update for the 68C. So, you know, all we can do is sit tight. This is a rerun. This is, I think, again, season 3, season 4, depending how you want to incorporate it. But what is your thought? I mean, should Jeep, I'm sure they are, Jeep be going after a Samsung? You know, is this your first time through the battery recall? Or have you been along for the bumpy ride like myself and Chris Hall have? You know, we've had 4xe since the beginning, since the inception of these things. Again, super long, I understand this was, but I wanted to paint the picture from what this has been till now. From the first recall, we've had multiple fixes, and basically we're 3-4 years later. I'm on my second 4xe, and the problem keeps chasing my second Jeep for that matter. And it's frustrating, right? It's frustrating. My daughter turned 16 in December. This is supposed to be her car. I mean, as a dad, I don't know that I can willingly put her in a car that has a potential for catching fire in the battery and under the hood right now. Will Jeep get it fixed? I hope so, but I really think the right answer would be battery replacements. My opinion, I am not an engineer, but needless to say, the fix has not worked 3 times in a row. So it's going to take a lot for Jeep to convince me that this 4th recall software fix is going to solve this. If you found this helpful, hit that like, subscribe button. Thanks for being here. If you didn't find it helpful, sorry you made it this far. So funny story, as I promised, that red North Face fleece I was wearing yesterday showed up in the mail, and on it was a tag, just a normal, you know, merchandise tag that you would get, and it had a tag on it that said Ford, and it was all Ford. It had a QR code on it. I scanned the QR code, and it brought me to the Ford Bronco page. I was like, holy cow. Now, to be fair, this was certainly not Jeep's fault. I know for a fact this stuff comes third party, right? It comes from, you know, whoever, whether it was North Face, whether it was Red, maybe it was somewhere in China that packs it. I have no idea. It obviously didn't come out of Jeep's warehouse. We know that, right? But anyway, I scanned this link. It brings me to Ford. I'm like, this is horrible. Like, Jeep's got to know about this problem. Like, it's all bad, you know? So I reached out to Jeep. I sent them a message, and I'm like, hey, just so you know, I got this fleece, and it's got a tag on it that says Ford, and it brings me to the Ford Bronco page. And they responded, and they were super, super thankful. I know they nipped the problem in the bud immediately. And as a thank you, they sent me a Jeep Red backpack, like holds a laptop, and it was like a $160 backpack and a Lego set. It was awesome. I super appreciated the thank you back, and I know they appreciated me pulling the fire alarm on them, because as a brand, that's really bad. And I'm sure whoever was packing these things out, or whatever company was packing them out, I'm sure they got an earful, because of all vehicles to have a QR code to bring you to, that was the bad one. So again, Jeep, I'm sure they did the right thing. They said thanks to me. They gave me a little gift as a thank you, and I know they handled it. But nonetheless, it was still kind of a funny story. And you know, these things happen. I wasn't mad, but man, if I was Jeep, I'd want to know, right? Happy Friday. We'll see you in the next video.